Today's sermon is titled The Hope-Filled Lessons of Love Shared to the World by Otto Frank, father of Anne Frank, to be delivered by my dear friend, Kara Wilson Granite. Kara is an author, inspirational speaker, devout nature lover, vegan, and animal advocate. Her books and talks embrace a universal theme of hope over adversity. She is the author of Strength from Tragedy. Anne Frank's father shares his wisdom with an American teen, soon to be the revised edition, Tree of Hope. Anne Frank's father shares his wisdom with an American teen and the world. Her first book, Love, Otto, was excerpted in the 1997 Reader's Digest and translated into many languages. Presently, in addition to freelance and writing projects, speaking engagements, as well as contributing to 2 upcoming documentaries on Otto and Anne Frank, Kara provides Zoom talks to audiences worldwide. A regular speaker for Rotaries and schools, Kara is also an elephant activist. And she's a board member of 2 501c3 nonprofit charities, Impact a Village, committed to improving healthcare and education in villages around the world, and upliftus.net, a movement of kindness helping those hunger and living challenged. Kara is a TEDx speaker, What Matters? Lessons from Anne Frank's father, and lives in Colorado with her husband Peter and fat Maine cat, coon cat, Boo. Peter and Kara also perform the timeless play Love Letters by A.R. Gurney. May I present Kara?
Thank you so much, Marianne. It's really hard to follow that gorgeous song because it's more beautiful than I even realized it, and how perfectly timely and appropriate it is for this talk today. So I'm very grateful, certainly, to be a part of all of you. I'm very moved by your service, by your words, and it's just been really already very transformative for me to be a part of you. So God bless you. Thank you so much. And it's an honor to be speaking about this man who has influenced my life for most of my life, Otto Frank. And it's not an accident that we should be talking about him today on Father's Day, because he was a mentor to children all over the world. I was just one of them. This began when I was 12 years old. I began writing to the father of Anne Frank, Otto Frank, in the late 50s after The Diary of Anne Frank was already a success on Broadway, and the book was becoming a classic. And I had been discovered by a talent scout in San Fernando Valley, picked me out. He asked if I would go to 20th Century Fox and audition for the movie part of Anne, which is, oh my God, of course. And I had just read The Diary. I was blown away by her. I couldn't believe that this young teenager had been killed. It just devastated me. So I went to 20th Century Fox, so excited. And well, I didn't get the part. I think that's really stupid of them, but whatever. But Millie Perkins, a beautiful model, got the part. And I said to them, was Otto Frank still alive? And they said, yes, he's still alive. He's in Basel, Switzerland. And they gave me his address. And that's what began a long and wonderful correspondence between he and I. It was just amazing. You know, I started, of course, his first letter to me was, of course, I can't continue writing to you. I write to children all over the world. And you understand I'm very busy. And I wrote back right away. Of course, I understand, Mr. Frank, but I just want to write to you. And I didn't give up. And he realized this kid's not going away. And so he started answering me, along with his wife, his second wife, Fritzi, that he met coming back from the camps. They became like my grandparents. And our correspondence continued. And I very much relate to what Stan was saying, because in the 60s, we had the assassinations of President Kennedy and Martin Luther King and Medgar Evers. But when Bobby Kennedy was killed, and there was the Vietnam War and these race riots, it went on and on and on. And I was devastated. And I couldn't believe it. And then when Bobby Kennedy was killed, I gave up. And I wrote to Otto Frank and I said, I can't believe why you have so much hope for the world. I have none. and I'll never bring a child into a world this cruel. And he wrote back to me right away and he said, Kara, you cannot give up hope. Now, this is a man who lost his entire family, his beautiful daughter, all of them in the Holocaust. And he's telling me not to give up hope. And for my birthday, a few months later, I received a card from Otto Frank that said, 2 trees had been planted in Israel in my name from Otto Frank. He knew this would get to me because he knew that even though I'm Jewish, my religion is nature. So to get a tree, 2 trees planted in his honor, in my name, meant more to me than anything. And of course, years later, I had my beautiful 2 trees, my sons. And he said, even if the end of the world would be imminent, you still must plant a tree today. And that has been like my mantra. No matter what, we cannot give up hope. So throughout this talk, I wanted you to, these are certain words and validations that he gave me. He chose love over fear, love over hate all the time. And this was something that he taught me, and I continue to feel in my heart, this very strong feeling. I couldn't believe how he survived what he did, because in 1933, he and his family had been very comfortable in Frankfurt, Germany, very well-to-do. He had been in the German army as a lieutenant. He considered himself a German over being a Jew. He was just, but then when Hitler took over and the Nazis, and they wanted to ethnic cleanse all of Europe, especially Germany, of all Jews, they targeted and say, all people, you are starving because of the Jews and people of color and Jehovah's Witnesses and people of disabilities and people who defied them, all of them, but especially the Jews. And that's when Otto Frank said, I must take my family out of here. It broke his heart. He went to Amsterdam, and though he had, he created this business, the spice factory, and spices and preserves with his brother-in-law, Holland was still getting worse and worse and worse. And eventually in 1942, they had to go into hiding. Above the spice factory, there was a hidden apartment. And in front of the doorway, they put a bookshelf, and he was hidden by his 4 helpers that worked for him. They were all non-Jews that said they would absolutely give their life for him. And they helped him hide. They helped. Eventually, there were 8 people in that hiding place. Mr. and Mrs. von Pels, his business partner, his son Peter, Pfeffer, a dentist, and of course, Mr. and Mrs. Frank and Margaret and Anne. 8 people in hiding. And especially the person who really helped him more than any was his assistant, Meat Geese. And if someday, if you want me to tell you all about her, I can't tell you enough about her. She was a hero beyond a hero, and she got upset if you said that about her, but that's who she was. So now they were in this little group, it looked like, and throughout the whole time, Anne was writing in her diary, and volumes of writing, all just writing and writing, writing. Nobody knew what she was saying, but this is basically what kept her sane. This little teenager who was going out of her mind, like a cage bird and a canary in a cage. That was this feeling. And it looked like maybe the war would be over and they would be free. But that wasn't the case, because on August 4th, 1944, they were captured. Somebody betrayed them, possibly somebody they knew. That's being looked into now. This, one of the documentaries is called The Cold Case Diary, trying to find out who did this. But they were captured, and they were sent from Westerbork to Auschwitz. It was the last time Otto saw his family. It's so hard to even look at that picture. And now he's in Auschwitz. And this is, again, the choices that he made. He said to this young man, let us not focus on the stench of death and the horror around us. Let's focus on literature and food and what we want to do when we get out. And especially, he said, he kept his identity so strong within him. He said, call me Papa, for that is who I am. And that's what kept him alive. Now, had he known, this is why the song gets to me so much, I'm hearing it in a whole different way. He didn't know what had happened to his daughters. They were transferred from Auschwitz to Bergen-Belsen in the dead of winter with typhus, and they were dying. He didn't know that. Had Anne known, that he was still alive. So when the song says, can you hear me? It makes me cry, because maybe if she would have survived, you don't know, but she didn't. She died with her sister in Bergen-Belsen of typhus, just a few months short of liberation. Otto didn't know that his daughters were dead. The only thing that kept him going was that he was going to find his daughters again. So that when he was liberated in 1945 from Auschwitz, just a skeletal, basically barely alive, it took him months to get back to Holland by train and by boat. And he met Fritzi, his second wife, who would become his second wife, through his daughter Eva. And that was the point where everybody was saying, what camp are you in? Do you know my father, my son? And he wrote a classified ad, have you seen my daughters, Anne and Margaret? And that's when he found out that his daughters had died. And he went back to the office where he worked with Miep and her husband Jan, and he said, I cannot be disturbed. The thing that had kept him alive now was shattered. He was over. What he didn't know was that after they had captured, Miep found Anne's diary and all her writing across the floor in the annex, and she retrieved it all. Now, again, the choices of love over fear and hate, she respected Anne so much, she did not read one word. And even though the helper said, let's read it, she says, no, I'm keeping this for Anne. I'm putting it in my desk until she returns. She validated this young girl, her privacy, and respected her so much that ultimately saved the Diary of Anne Frank. So when Otto came back and said, I cannot be disturbed, he went in his office, head down, his life was over. That's when Miep took out all the letters in the diary, and she opens up the office and she puts it in front of him, puts his hands on top of the diary and said, this is your daughter's legacy. And he could not believe what he was seeing. And then he could not believe what he was reading. He didn't know this side of Anne. Eventually, he showed it to his family and his friends, and everybody encouraged him. It must be published, because Anne said that she wanted to go on living even after her death. And he was a very private man, but he was encouraged. Yes, I need to do this. And he did. And the book became a classic, and became first in Europe and then in the United States. And that's when it became a Broadway play. And that's when the movie was going on. And this is all this, how it evolved. And the Diary of Anne Frank really happened because Miep had such respect, such validation for this child that she loved so much. So now here I am writing to him in San Fernando Valley. We've been writing to each other for nearly 18, almost 20 years, but I had never met him. And so everybody in the family said, you must meet him now. He's an old man, and you've got to see Fritzi. And so that's what happened. I got, my family took care of our two boys, and I got flew there, and Miep was the one who took me around the Anne Frank house. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's tourists like crazy. And she was the one who told me the stories. It's an incredible story, how she showed me all of this. She was so brave, this woman. She was almost shot by the very Nazis who trapped them. She was an amazing human being. But when she took me to the Anne Frank house, it was just like being with a rock star. She's walking around, this little Viennese lady holds my hand, and she says, here is where Peter and Otto were. They read together, and Peter, Otto would teach them every day. And this is where they all ate. And this is Anne's. And here on the floor right in front of me is where I found the diary. Well, now there were tourists everywhere, and they're looking at her, and they said, who are you? She says, well, did you read the diary? I'm Miep. It was like being with a Rolling Stone, like a rock star. It was unbelievable. She says, now they are waiting for you in Basel. You must go. And so I was finally going to meet this man I'd been writing to all my life, who influenced me more than anything in the whole world. And I was terrified. Coming from Hollywood, everything in my life then and still has been scene A and scene B. Scene A is the way I wish life would be. Scene A was the backup scene that I hated. Scene A was, oh my God, it's so wonderful to see you. And, we would embrace each other and cry and hold each other, and he would be everything I hoped he would be. Scene B, not so much. It would be like, I am a busy man. Let's have some tea together. I can't, I'm very busy, and we will do what we can, but, let's, see each other. It was like, ugh. So now I'm on the train We're heading to Basel. And I could hear the conductor saying Basel. And I've been writing that. It felt like forever. And now the doors open, and up on the platform, I see Fritzi. And there she is. And she, oh my God, God, you look like your pictures. We were hugging each other. And I said, Fritzi, where is Otto? And she said, there he is. And there he was. This tall, elegant, beautiful man. You could see that he had been a Prussian soldier. He held himself so tall, black jacket and a white shirt and tie and gaunt, beautiful face. And he turns to me, arms outstretched. Gotta, at last. It was Cine. It was Cine. The most beautiful moment I will never forget as long as I live. It was Scene A. And now we hugged each other, teary-eyed, he and Fritzi and I holding each other. And then we went back to their place, and I was in shock, just in shock. And he shows me this family album that Meep had also rescued, and the pictures of Anne and Margaret as children. And it all looked so normal. And then she showed, and he point, I said, well, what is that picture? And it was these little golden haired, beautiful children, little boys in a sandbox. He says, God, that is me as a little boy. And all those little boys over there, except that one over there, grew up to become Nazis. And that affected me so much because those children were not Nazis. They learned it. And I say to young people, you do not have to be cruel. You do not have to follow cruelty. Those children were innocent at that point. And it really affected me. And then Otto opens this huge cupboard door, and from ceiling to floor, boxes and boxes and boxes of letters. Yes, Kara, you're not the only one I write to all these years. And I couldn't believe it. Oh my God. All of these years, he made me feel so special. And I knew he wrote to other people, but so many. And then he took this huge box and put it down in front of me and said, and these are your letters, my letters. He saved my letters. It's not that anything I said was so wonderful. It's just that I mattered to him like we all mattered to him. All of us children, Otto's children, I call them, from all over the world, all races and religions, reached out to this beautiful father figure. We were able to help him continue his parenting, and he guided us from some very profound experiences. Some of these people I've mentioned in my book that I love so much. Two of them have become my brothers. One is a priest. I love him more than anything, my father, John. He saved us all. Incredible. And then there was that moment that I turned to him and I said, Otto, do you know who betrayed you? He looked at me and he said, it doesn't matter. And I was in shock. It doesn't matter? I mean, inside I'm screaming. How could he say it doesn't matter? Somebody he probably knew turned them in, collected money for 8 people in hiding. They were all killed. How could he say it doesn't matter? And yet I looked into his eyes and I could see the pain. Of course it mattered. And when he first was liberated, it did matter. He did everything he could to find out who it was. But at the point I saw him, he was an older man. 3 years later, he would pass. And he was at peace, finding out it was not going to make him any better. And it was like that wonderful adage I like so much. Holding on to hatred and revenge and anger is like taking poison and hoping it kills the other person. I have to remember that all the time. And also the choices that this man made. He could have been a bitter, angry, hate-filled man, hating all Germans, and he wasn't. He wanted to unify the world. All his efforts was to keep all religions and races, and there was so much love that he was able to emanate in the world. And he used his pain, his hate, and transformed it into love and saved all of our lives because of that. And years later, after he passed, I had to remember that lesson because I hit bottom. I went through divorce and bankruptcy and self-pity and all of that stuff, and I was flat on the floor. And I had to remember, if that man could rise above and B, the strength he was, I had to do that. And I had to remember that because it was all about ego and studying humility. And I had 6 animals. I fled to the Monterey Peninsula where a friend of mine said, you write for me and we'll find a place for you. 6 animals. I didn't know what I was going to do at the age of almost 50. I didn't know anything about the world. And thank God my sons were off to school, college, and now I had to find, all kinds of work. So now I had published my first edition of book on Otto. I was experiencing like 15 minutes of fame in this Monterey area as an author. And I thought, oh, this is my Oprah moment. I'm going to be rescued. Didn't happen. No, I was dressed as a little penguin in a black and white uniform, working for one of the top, hotels in Monterey as a banquet server. And there I was, and I look out in the conference room because they have a list of who's there, and it was all of Monterey seemed to be there. And I said to this group, I can't go out there. They think of me as a successful author, and look at me, I'm just a loser. I'm a banquet server. And they said to me, Kara, we're all in this together. We're teachers, we're architects, we're all that. And then one of them whispered in my ear as she handed me a big basket of bread and said, you go out there and you put it on the table. Guess what? It doesn't matter. And that's what got to me. When you step outside of your ego, and I had to remember that, and I embraced the fact that what mattered was that I was a banquet server. I had enough money to feed 6 animals. And all of that came back to me. All of those lessons that Otto had given me was probably for that moment. And I was able to be what he said to me, be a tree of hope. Have hope in your life. Be the tree not only for yourself, and there's Anne's beautiful chestnut tree. Be your tree of hope and plant hope for the world and within yourself, because we are each seedlings of hope, and validate not only yourself, but others. Whether now we're able to even hug each other, which is just fabulous, and validate the gifts that you have, the senses that you have. Can you see, hear, touch, smell, taste? Validate the gifts of that. Embrace those and be like a little pebble. In person, I love to do this. I have a big basket of pebbles, and I say to everybody, pick up a pebble, a smooth stone, and remember, you are that pebble. You throw the pebble into water and it sends out ripples of effect. It could either be positive or negative. The choice is in our hands. The choice to be depressed and miserable, no matter what challenges we have, we can find some edifying moment in our lives to be able to grow from it, to be able to validate ourselves, to be able to be our tree of hope, to be able to help each other. That's what matters. That's what Otto Frank gave me, and he gives that to me every moment. I fight hopelessness, just like we're talking about what's going on in the world, and I find myself plummeting. But if I can do one tiny thing and appreciate my grandson whispering in my ear, my cat sitting on my lap, looking outside and breathing in the air, being able to walk, talk, anything, that moment transforms me into now I'm not a victim. I'm not a victim. I'm a gardener. I'm a teacher. I'm a student, and I'm alive. And for this moment in life, that's all that matters. So God bless you all. And God bless you, Otto Frank, who is right here beside me. Before any talk I give, I hear his voice, and he says, just tell the story. Tell the story. And I ask you to please tell the story, because hate has never been stronger for all races and religions, anti-Semitism, and all we can do is be the pebble of love. That's what we're here for. God bless you, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Kara. Thank you very, very much. I feel like taking a moment of quiet, just let it all sink in.